Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode right here on Entrepreneur Podcast Club. So this is the first ever virtual podcast that I'm doing. I'm your host, Mr. EPC. I give a big, massive round of applause to my very special guest, Karl. So welcome to the show first and foremost. And thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. So let's just kick this off. So do you just want to tell the viewers a bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Karl Swanepoel. I founded a company called Revolancer just over 2 years ago. And basically, I have been freelancing and, wanting to become an entrepreneur for about the past 10 years since I was 13. Tried lots and lots of different things, many of which didn't work out. Some did work out okay. And, now using all of that experience to build Revolancer, and Revolancer's goal is to give freedom back to freelancers and just permanently change the freelancing industry for the better. So I'm still very much at the start of my journey and just really enjoying as I go.
Okay, fantastic. So you said you started your company 2 years ago. So what was the point in your life where you said, yeah, I'm going to start Revolancer?
Sure, yeah. So it was in very early 2021 in January. Basically, I had for a long time been, dissatisfied with how large freelance platforms operate because the way they make money is they take a commission fee. So, typically they can take 25% of the transaction. And if that sounds unfair, well, that's exactly where I'm going with this, because many people, try and avoid paying that. So they stop you from communicating outside of the platform. So one of the things you can't do, for example, on lots of these large freelancing platforms is you can't video call. And in January of 2021, of course, in the UK, we were in a COVID lockdown at the time. And video calling, is now such an essential part of remote work post-pandemic. And these large platforms, they still weren't adapting. I was already thinking they were outdated back in 2014 when I, kind of first started being exposed to them. So then I saw also that my university had a startup competition where you could enter and then win £10,000 and a few other prizes as well. And I thought, well, I have been a freelancer in the past. I'm very familiar with the other platforms. I even started a freelance marketplace a few years before that. So I thought I can do something about this, change the industry for the better. And that's, what I've been working towards since then.
Okay, fantastic. So when you first opened your business, how did you first fund it?
Yeah, sure. So initially, it basically didn't have any funding, and like maybe £50 or something to register a domain name and register the company or something like that. But like I said, I entered that startup competition at my university. So after about 3 months, I was fortunate enough to win both of the main cash prizes. So I won a £13,000 grant. And then that kind of took us from, idea stage all the way to having a working MVP, at which point we then raised a pre-seed round from a VC, I think 6 months after the competition. So about 9 months after I started the company, we raised our pre-seed round.
Okay, fantastic. So I mentioned a few acronyms, MVP and VC. So do you just want to go into a bit more detail as to what those acronyms mean?
Yeah, so MVP is minimum viable product. So that's just essentially, it's I think predominantly used for tech companies. So their software or hardware product. Just like let's say, for example, you run a freelance marketplace like I do. The minimum viable product is just a website that people can join that connects, kind of facilitates that transaction. So it doesn't have lots of fancy bells and whistles, but it does the basics so you can start growing it and start getting users. So that's MVP. And then VC is a venture capital fund. So they're a type of institutional investor who raise money from individual investors, as a part of a fund. And then they deploy that fund into various different startups that fit a certain criteria that they look for. Could be, for example, a certain industry or a certain stage or that sort of thing. So yeah, closed our first funding round where our lead investor, so our main investor in that round was a venture capital fund.
Okay, fantastic. So let's take this right back. So tell us a bit about your background personally, where you're born and bred, the type of school you went to, where you got your entrepreneurship spirit from as well.
Yeah, sure. So I was actually born in South Africa and I lived in Germany for a couple of years too before moving to the UK. Yeah, I mean, I started kind of by going to a German school. I was in a German school in South Africa, then obviously a German school in Germany as well. And then when I was in year six, so just the final year of primary school, I came to the UK and then started learning in English. Um, I mean, the schools I went to were all comprehensive schools. Yeah, other than my first school year, the German school in South Africa, I think that was a private school, but outside of that, I haven't been to any private schools. In terms of where I got my entrepreneurial spirit from, I honestly have no idea because my my parents and direct family are not doing anything that's like remotely entrepreneurial. So I really don't know, but it's something that I, at a quite a young age, so around 13, realized that, just kind of had this really strong feeling that this is what I wanted to do, and that nothing else would be able to come close to how fulfilled I was feeling from doing entrepreneurship. And well, it turns out that I was right, and that's just kind of what what I've always kind of known and always been working towards.
Okay, fantastic. So what other businesses have you had previously before launching Revolancer?
Sure. So I mean, it depends, like partially what you mean by business, because I've tried, I want to say dozens. It's possibly more than 100, like just individual websites or eBay store, or just drop shipping this, just like various small projects. So, but I wouldn't call them all businesses. They were like, I set up a website, maybe made like, maybe made nothing, maybe made a couple £100, but like nothing enormous in most cases. But in terms of, the business, like notable businesses I would count are, so first of all, I started a freelancing marketplace when I was 15, called Buy Sell Jobs. I actually sold that company after about just under 6 months of running it, just before my 16th birthday. And the big reason for that was that PayPal kept closing my accounts down that I was using for the marketplace because I was under 18. Well, they were closing it down because more and more money was going through there, and I couldn't unlock them because I couldn't prove I was over 18. So yeah, I'd say that was like my first like serious project where I actually like made some decent money from it and then sold it too. And then, the other thing I'd mention is I started a small like web and marketing agency in my local town when I was 18, and got an office on the high street for that too. So that was a like completely new experience. It was a really stupid thing to do because anything that could have been profit just went right into rent. And of course, we could have like run an agency completely online. But it was still a really good experience. It led to meeting one of the co-founders of Just Eat, who's one of my advisors today. So I don't regret it at all. But yeah, I'd say those are probably like the two notable ones before Revolancer.
Okay, fantastic. So in terms of Revolancer, how did you choose this specific niche to go into as a business?
Yeah, so it's very much because I mean, being quite young still myself, there's one big weakness that I'm going to have for the foreseeable future is simply a lack of experience. Like I don't have a few decades of industry experience, but something where I have very strong experience in is in the freelancing sector. So, first starting out by being a freelancer, then learning about the flaws with the other platforms, then starting and running my own platform for a bit. Then later when I had an agency, like using these platforms from the client perspective. So I've got a pretty good understanding of this industry. And I'm very passionate as well about helping freelancers and kind of making their lives easier. So simply because it's an area where I have quite a lot of expertise, contacts, knowledge, background, that kind of thing, and then compounded with the fact that I believe that these large platforms are not very compatible with the way we do remote work nowadays, such as video calling. So the timing was really there to have a positive impact in the freelancing space, kind of within the pandemic, but now also after the pandemic, because the changes to how we work have absolutely remained the same.
Okay, fantastic. And in terms of your marketing strategy, how do you go about marketing your company, getting it out there?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, essentially So one of my advisors is a co-founder of Just Eat. He was their CMO, so he was their marketing head from very very early on, all the way up to when they IPO'd. And I don't know if you remember, but there were all these like "Don't Cook, Just Eat" ad campaigns. They started a political party. They did all kinds of like crazy stuff. He was behind all of that. And essentially what he taught me is, with marketing, there's like paid growth and then there's earned growth. And at your core, you need to have earned growth, especially if you're a startup and you don't have, a multi-million-pound marketing budget or whatever. And essentially what that earned growth looks like is you need to build a product that is so compelling to people that they will talk to other people about it naturally without you needing to incentivize them. So, not like through an affiliate scheme or anything, but just build something that's so cool and useful that they will naturally talk about it with other people. So at our core, that's what we're focused on, like really just talking to our users and then improving and, shaping the platform so that it is something which they feel extremely positive about and then share. And then essentially we do have that. There's still a long way to go. I think there always will be, but we do have a very kind of loyal, like evangelist user base. And then you can kind of use paid growth to just pour fuel on the fire, like just accelerate that. So we have, various paid marketing strategies like ad campaigns, influencer collaboration, stuff like that. But at its core, the most important part is just having a platform that's so good that people will tell their friends about it.
Okay, fantastic. So you say you got the former CMO of Just Eat as part of your company. So how did you build that relationship and get him or her on board with your company?
Yeah, so actually, so that went all the way back to when I got an office with my web and marketing agency. So I got an office on my high street. Like I said, it was a terrible idea, but one thing that it was really good at, it was attracting the attention of like the small town's local newspaper. So they came and like interviewed me, sent a photographer, like this whole thing, 18-year-old gets office on the high street, blah, 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 on the front page of that, their business section. And then I got an email from somebody saying, he's an entrepreneur in the local area. He read about me in the newspaper and he wanted to meet up. So then, without like looking into who he was at all, I don't know why. It's very, very foolish of me, but I didn't look into who he was at all. I just said, yeah, sure. Here's the address, and then we arranged a time. So then he came over. At the time, I like when I first met him, I remember kind of being just a bit freaked out because he showed up on his bicycle. He had like long curly hair, long beard, like in a top knot. He wanted to vape a bunch before he came in. I was kind of thinking like, who did I invite over? But then within about like 30 seconds of speaking to him, I realized like, no matter what, I cannot ever like let this connection go. Because basically he told me what he had done, and he was the marketing head for Top Table, which is now Open Table. He was the marketing head for the Financial Times, and then he was the founding CMO of Just Eat, and he was behind all that Don't Cook, Just Eat ad campaigns. So like, and then after that, when they IPO'd, he exited and then founded another company as well called Rock, Paper, Scissors. So absolutely incredible guy, very accomplished guy. So basically what I did is I just tried to impress him with what I was doing. It was like listening to everything that he was telling me. And then I made sure to get his contact on WhatsApp. And then basically every couple of months or so, I would just check in with him, like wish him a Merry Christmas or just ask him a question about something I'm working on, just to make sure that, he remembers who I am. So I kind of nurture that connection. But at the time, I didn't have anything to work with him on or like to try and work with him on. And then basically that went on for, I want to say like 2.5 years. And 2.5 years later, or maybe 3 years. Yeah, about 2.5, 3 years later, I was in my final year of uni. I was, the start of 2021. I had this idea for Revolancer. And then I thought he would be an absolutely perfect advisor for it because he has such strong like two-sided marketplace experience. So I sent him a WhatsApp, just explained the whole concept to him, and asked, "Do you want to be an advisor?" And then he said, "No, he's far too busy, can't do that." So then I thought, okay, I'm not going to give up that easily. So every 2 weeks, while I was getting ready for this competition at my university, every 2 weeks I'd send him like a mini newsletter on WhatsApp. I'd be like, oh, I figured this thing out, spoke to this person, partnered with this organization, changed this thing about my idea. I just kind of like sent him like a mini list like that. And then every couple of weeks I did that. And every time he would read the message and he wouldn't get back to me. He wouldn't respond. And I did that for nearly 3 months. And then it was a few days before the competition final. So at this point, I probably sent him like, I don't know, like seven or so of these messages or something like that. He read everyone, didn't reply to me. And it was a few days before the final pitch event for this competition. And I just sent him another message. I was like, hey, it's a few days away from the pitch. Can I practice the pitch with you? Can we hop on a quick call? And then I also said to him, like, have you been receiving my messages? And then he came back and he said, yes, I have been receiving your messages. I've been ignoring you, he said to me. And then he said, like, okay, fine, let's get on a call. Like, show me your pitch. Then we got on a call. By that point, I practiced my pitch quite a lot, so it was quite well polished. Pitched the idea to him. Then afterwards, he basically just said to me, like, are you trying to win the competition or are you really trying to build this business? And I said, I'm really trying to build this business. And then he said, okay, I'll be your advisor. And he, and so he's been advising me for about 2 years on Revolancer now. And what's really cool as well is he advises 2 companies. One of them has raised about £200 million, and the other one is us. And we're at a much, much earlier stage, but I think we're in good company there. But ultimately, it just goes to show that, being persistent can actually get you quite far. Because if I would have at any point like gotten disheartened and listened to him when he said no, he wouldn't be my advisor.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good story, and it's so good that you continue to be persistent. As if you didn't, you wouldn't have him on board. So moving on to absolutely. The current market state, have you seen a shift in the marketplace, and how have you dealt with this?
In what sense do you mean? Like in the freelancing market or
yeah, in the freelancing else? Yeah, in the freelancing market.
Yes, I mean, more and more people are getting into freelancing, and I think it's a trend that's happening anyway, but it's even accelerated by the cost of living crisis and by like various other macroeconomic factors. McKinsey predicts that by 2027, more than half of the US workforce will be freelancers. And even right now, there are 1.56 billion freelancers in the world, which is about a third of the global workforce. So, yeah, I mean, more and more people are getting into it. It's easier than ever with the internet and with people being more comfortable with like remote work post-pandemic as well. That's made a big difference. And ultimately, I think it's a very positive shift because, freelancing is all about freedom. You can set your own hours. You can choose who you work with. You can ultimately do what you love.
Okay, fantastic. So in terms of the freelancing, what fields does your business specialize in?
Yeah, so I mean, it's basically anything that can be done remotely and like mostly stuff that a business would be interested in. But the main kind of areas of specialty are graphic design, web development, media, and marketing.
Okay, fantastic. So let's move on to IR35, one of the reforms that came into play a few years ago. So do you just want to tell the viewers a bit about what IR35 is and what impact it has had on freelancers?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I want to be careful with what I say because I'll preface this, with saying like, 1, I'm not an expert, 2, I'm not a lawyer, etc. But yeah, basically, so one of the issues with freelancing, well, like not an issue necessarily, but what HMRC has identified to be an issue with freelance contractors is just kind of an underreporting of income potentially, and then also companies hiring freelancers as opposed to hiring full-time employees, maybe in part so that they can like avoid paying the income tax on both sides. So ultimately, IR35 is just kind of a reform to, or kind of a new law to for HMRC to like have a bit more visibility and ultimately get get the appropriate tax and avoid people kind of taking advantage of the system to avoid paying income tax, for example.
Okay, fantastic. So let's move on to what a typical day looks like for you as a business owner.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the best way to summarize it is there's no such thing as a typical day. Like every day is completely different, and like being the CEO of a startup, especially with a team. So we're a team of 8 now and growing. But basically, you have to deal with absolutely like so many different things. So like my main responsibility is fundraising and investor relations. But like if a customer suddenly gets like very irate and it's too much for the support team to handle, like I have to step in. If we like have to speak to legals or accountants, again, that's on me. If there's some kind of a conflict in the team which gets escalated, again, that's like on me. If the website goes down, which thankfully has not happened in a long time, but when we first launched, things were very unstable in a lot of ways. Then again, I need to get involved. So it's very all over the place. Lots of the stuff I have to deal with are quite high stress. But then again, for me personally, and this is actually a great question, I think that anybody who wants to go into entrepreneurship should ask themselves is it better for you to be bored or stressed? Because for most people, they'd rather be bored than stressed. But for me, being bored is a lot worse than being stressed. So like I get stressed out quite a lot with what I do. I mean, it's nothing that I can't handle, but it's definitely not like a stress-free kind of role. But I'm never bored, and that makes me very happy.
Okay, fantastic. So how do you go about building business connections?
Yeah, so I mean, people have told me that I'm very good at networking for years already. I never like agreed with them simply because I'm not the kind of person who will like go to a networking event and just, talk to everyone or just generally be that interested in, like sales I am interested in, but just like I'm not naturally someone who goes around and introduces myself to everyone. But ultimately, what I kind of learned now with more experience is that's really not what networking is about. Because if you're at a networking event, like everyone's there just trying to push their business cards into people's faces and talk about what they offer to try and make sales. And then everyone knows that. So everyone's like ignoring what other people are saying and just like trying to push their own narrative. So in many cases, I think networking events are a terrible place to network. And I think a good place to network is just to look out for opportunities. So like if you encounter someone who you think is interesting and who might be able to help you with something, like just chat to them, show an interest, build that relationship. I mean, a lot of my best contacts have kind of come from that, just all over the place. There isn't like the only pattern there is to them is like I showed an interest and I tried to build a relationship with them, but it wasn't like I met all my great contacts at a certain event or on a certain website or whatever. It's been absolutely all over the place. But just showing a genuine interest in other people can really get you a long way.
Absolutely. Fantastic. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen, for this podcast. I've been your host, Mr. EPC. Big shout out to Karl for his time. Thank you very much for your time, Karl.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. And I will put all the social media links to Karl's social media links in the description box below. So if you did like this video, please hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. And do look out for the next podcast. And thank you very much for watching.